Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation. Today we have a special guest, Greg Fox. Greg is the Director of Athletics at Yeshiva University with 15 sports, 8 sports in men's, 7 for women on the NC888 Division, level Division 3. Yeshiva is the flagship Jewish university in the country and is incredible, unique. Greg, welcome to the podcast today.
Daniel, thank you for having me.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure. So, Greg, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started as the Director of Athletics, and a little bit about your journey?
Sure. Happy to. I started in college athletics when I was a student at Fairleigh Dickinson University in the 1980s, believe it or not. I was a student assistant in the sports information office, which is more or less the public relations office for an athletic program. And from there, it just kind of blossomed. I fell in love with college athletics, worked my way up at FDU into the early to mid 90s. Then I was at LIU Brooklyn for 20 years as both the media relations director of the athletic program and then also the associate director of athletics. I was in charge of alumni relations, development, community relations, several areas at LIU. I left the business at the end of 2015, and I ran a Boys and Girls Club in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, and I really loved that experience, working with children age 6 through 18, and it was a real eye-opening experience, and I quickly fell in love with the kids in that community. And it was very, very difficult for me to leave, but my wife and I had just started a family, and I was getting home, 10:30 every night. It just wasn't a tenable situation for me. So I decided to get back into college athletics at that point, and I was looking in the tri-state area, and I noticed that there was an associate position available at Yeshiva. And I thought about it, and I applied for it. I got the job, and I said to myself when I started working here, maybe I'll put in 2-3 years and move on and see what else is out there. And I got to tell you, I quickly fell in love with this place. It's a phenomenal place to work, and we have exceptional student athletes here. And within a matter of 5 years, I was promoted to director. So I've been the director of athletics for the past year and a half, and I absolutely love it here. I love our student athletes. I love the uniqueness of this institution. And I also have no plans to leave it.
Awesome. Thank you. So, as you know, Greg, this podcast and most of the listeners is on the future of transportation, especially around ground transportation. And for a lot of the listeners, you might be wondering, well, what does the director of athletics has to do with transportation? And I will say it a lot. As a matter of fact, my first client, Greg, how I actually got started in the transportation sector is because one of my teachers actually got promoted to becoming the director of athletics. He noticed that I used to drive this van to the school, and he's the one that asked me, hey, why don't you start transporting the basketball team or the baseball, for all the local games? And I say, sure, let's give it a try. But what a lot of folks don't know is how much the director of athletics has to be managing and working in conjunction with the transportation providers to make sure that teams get transported safely to their games and destinations. So with that being said, what role, how do you what crucial role does transportation play in your organization?
Yeah, we're also unique in the sense that most most colleges and universities, they have their own vehicles. They either own coach buses or they have university vans that are branded. At YU, we don't have either. So we have been outsourcing our transportation, certainly since I've been here, and I think for many, many years prior to me. So it's a large expense for us, but it's a necessary one. And you said it a minute ago, Daniel. Safety is the number one priority, and also timeliness and comfort. So finding a company like DPV Transportation has really been a godsend for us.
Awesome. So thank you, Greg. Thank you for your words. So what challenges do you encounter on your role when it comes to transportation, whether it's, between before DPV got on board and then now that we're working together, and obviously every company has its challenges, so you're more than welcome to share your experience. But in general, what are the most common challenges that you have when dealing with ground transportation companies?
Yeah, I would say professionalism on a consistent basis from some of the service providers we've had, and I mean drivers who are professional and behave a certain way with our student athletes. That's been a challenge in the past. We're in the heart of New York City, or we're in Washington Heights uptown, and we travel throughout the city and Westchester and five boroughs. So having a service provider that will be on time and get us to places on time and safely is paramount to us, and that's often a challenge. So we've been in this relationship with EP since the and it is really it's really been a sensational relationship so far, and all these areas in which we've had challenges previously, we're in a good place right now.
Thank you, Greg. And Greg, for other director of athletics that understand sort of the frustration that you go to on a daily basis when it comes into transportation, booking transportation, and as you mentioned in the past before we started providing the services, what were sort of the challenges that were keeping you up at night, and how are they being addressed now, and what will your recommendations be to other director of athletics with the experience that you have, just working in general? It doesn't have to be with DPV, working in general with transportation providers. Like, what has worked for you and what hasn't worked for you?
I gotta tell you, my recommendations would be for the service providers and not so much for other athletic directors. There are so many athletic directors who are in our position of not having our own vehicles on campus. But what I would tell other service providers, we with DPV, we have our main point of contact. So if there are changes, and there are always going to be changes that are weather related, or something, an act of God happens, and we have our main point of contact. But if that main point of contact is not available, with DPV, we have other points of contact who we can reach in order to discuss changes on the spot. We were working with a service provider previously in which there was only one point of contact. And if that person was at an event, was sleeping, was unavailable for whatever reason, we were unable to communicate. So having the lines of communication open really 24/7 is really paramount to having a successful relationship.
Got it. Thank you, Greg. And in regards to transportation in the future, where do you see transportation for your students in the next 10 to 20 years? Do you see do you see ourselves commuting in autonomous vehicles, flying cars? What's your imagination, Greg? What comes to mind?
I'm not really thinking that far ahead. It's something that worries me, and I'm concerned about on a day-to-day basis, and managing and maintaining the current relationships. Flying cars. I was a Jetsons fan when I was a child. So If it comes to that, if it's safer to be in a flying vehicle, I'm all for it. But at this point right now, for the future, we are either going to um, uh, be in a relationship with DPV or a company similar to DPV, or we are going to have our own vehicles. I don't see in the immediate future anything beyond that. And I would love for the relationship that we have now with DPV to continue well into the future.
Thank you, Greg. Really appreciate it. And Greg, based on your experience, why did Yeshiva, prefer to outsource the sort of the vehicles and the services instead of having the fleet operated by Yeshiva, pretty much?
Those decisions were made long before I arrived. What happens in other smaller schools like us is, schools have I'll call it a fleet of vans, but they will also have graduate assistants from each athletic program who drive those vehicles. So there'll be a coach from each program who will drive their student athletes to and from practices. We don't have a graduate assistant program here for athletics, so we don't have the staff to manage those vehicles. I think doing it that way, I think down the road it would pay for itself. But the important thing for us right now is to be in a position where we are providing a quality, comfortable, and safe service for our student athletes. And that's what we're doing. We can honestly and pleasantly tell our student athletes, you are going to be driving in style to all of your practices, to all of your competitions. And to a person, our student athletes have been very pleased with this relationship this year.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. And honestly, you brought a great point that I always mention to either clients or other entrepreneurs in different areas, which is focus on your business, right? A lot of times I see from other institutions, whether it's coaches trying to maneuver vehicles, maintenance, instead of focusing on their own expertise, which is coaching the kids and making sure that they're focusing on their main role. And so and on our end, our main focus is the transportation and making sure that we deliver that experience for the students. And switching a little bit of the subjects, Greg, what is the best business books or professional career books that you have read that has helped you along the journey?
I haven't, I got to tell you, I haven't read too many of those motivational books. I've read a few. Mike Krzyzewski's book, who was a longtime coach at Duke University, and part of Phil Jackson's book on motivating great players. That sort of the motivational aspect of dealing with higher level student athletes has always appealed to me. I've read a few books on management styles, but nothing along the lines that you.
Yeah. Well, what's your go-to books when it comes into if you what's your best reads?
I certainly, and I can't remember the names of them, but the Phil Jackson book and the Mike Krzyzewski book, absolutely phenomenal. The names of those, the titles escape me, but the Krzyzewski and the Phil Jackson books, highly recommend.
Okay, I'll check them out, especially managing high talented individuals. And then, Greg, my last question is in regards to what is the best either business advice or personal advice that you have received, whether it's from family members or colleagues, mentors, that you could share with us?
I would say, as a manager, I would always say that I would never give a job to anybody on my staff, and I have I think 9 full-time people and about 40 part-time people under me at YU. I would never give anybody a job that I wouldn't do myself. I don't think there is a single job that is beneath me. And I want to be involved in every aspect of ensuring that the experience of our student athletes is a positive one. And that includes, being the main point of contact for, our transportation contract. That's such a huge area for us. And I want to make sure it's going smoothly, and I want to make sure that our student athletes are being served well, and that they are happy, and that they're safe. And that when they, do their exit interviews after 4 years, that when they look at the transportation aspect of things, that they are checking off a positive in that regard. And that, that's across the board, not just transportation. That is their entire student athlete experience. That's all very important to me.
Very, very well said. Well, with that being said, Greg, thank you very much for being part of the show. We appreciate your partnership, and thank you for tuning in today. For all the listeners, please make sure you like and subscribe. And if you have an upcoming ground transportation program, please make sure you reach out to us. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the future of ground transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.